This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
The paternal grandfather of the Chassam Sofer, the Maharash shach, Rabbeinu Shmuel Shatin, was nifter in 1719. So what's interesting was Motzei Shabbos, I was preparing him, and I had this cheshek. You know what? I have to prepare. I saw something interesting about the Maharash shach. He was an expert in mathematics. I don't know. I had a tshuka to prepare him, and my final preparation was that night was his yahrzeit, Yud Ches Tammuz, Motzei Shabbos. As I was preparing, I discovered it was his yahrzeit. Now, what's very interesting is he had a mechutin, the Baal Masoras Hashas, the one who wrote the extra Hagoyos on the Masoras Hashas, that were Rabbi Yosef Shmuel, and the Maharash shach was like the fill-in chief rabbi of Frankfurt on a number of occasions. So this is very interesting. He was the mechutin of the Baal Toisos of the Masoras Hashas. So when Rabbi Yosef Shmuel, the author of the Hagoyos of the Masoras Hashas, was nifter, the Maharash shach became the chief rabbi here. Until Rav Naftali Katz got the job. Rav Naftali Katz was the Rav in Prague. And he came here, he became the chief rabbi of Frankfurt. He wrote the Smichas Chachamim. And until the year, he was the chief rabbi here in Frankfurt until the year 1711. But what happened in 1711? Frankfurt burnt down. They accused Rav Naftali Katz of being responsible for burning down Frankfurt because he was involved in Kabbalah Masas. They acquitted him, but he could never get the job back. So Rav Naftali Katz, when the Goyne Olam was the Rav, but he was removed. And then who's going to replace him? Nachamo, the Maharash shach, was the chief rabbi of Frankfurt until Rabbi Avram Broidi came along and became the chief rabbi of Frankfurt. We'll talk about him on the bus. Rabbi Avram Broidi is also buried in this immediate vicinity. Rabbi Avram Broidi was Gadol HaRosh Yeshivas in the times of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. He was the premier, preeminent Marbitz Torah b'Yisrael in the 1800s. He was the premier Rosh Yeshiva in Klal Yisrael. And Rabbi Avram Broidi came, and again, the Maharash shach served as the chief rabbi until the Shev Yaakov, that we're going to come to in a moment, was the chief rabbi of Frankfurt. He was nifter on Yud Ches Tammuz on a Friday night in the year 1719. He's the author of Kais Yeshuais on Seder Nazikin. He wanted to write on all of Shas. He decided to write only on Nazikin. I'm going to tell you something Oyom V'Noira from the Sefer Chura Meshulash of the descendant of the Chassam Sofer. But we had to do something over here. This is mamish one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. By the way, I'll tell you what it says on the Maharash shach's grave. It says, Poinitman Tzinsenes Hamon, Kilkel V'Darda Chokim V'Rabon, Iskari B'Chomine Chachma Mada, like we mentioned, he was an expert in mathematics. Lo Hiniach Davar Godo V'Davar Katan Ad Yarda La'omkoi. Fine. Says the Chura Meshulash. Chura Meshulash is the classic biography of Rabbi Kever and the Chassam Sofer. Next to the grave of the Maharash shach, in this area, there's a hole in the ground. That the Kabbalah in Klal Yisrael is, the hole goes to the Kever of Moshe Rabbeinu. In this area. And for hundreds of years, Kol mi sheyesh lo eza b'akasha, Elisha Lekim, if you need Moshe Rabbeinu for something, you would come here. And you would go next to the grave of the Maharash shach. If you need Moshe Sheyam Litzavuroi Lefnei Moran Di B'Shmaya, you would put the kvittel in this makom for Moshe Rabbeinu to take up to the Shemayim. That was the Messiah. And this makom was access to the kever of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's interesting that the Chassam Sofer said that his generation, there was never a generation greater and had more Gedolei Yisrael since the Dor Deah itself, since the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. But somehow, there's some kind of Messiah that in this Makom is the access of the Kever of the Raya de Behemna, Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.